Welcome to the wildversepodcast, where we introduce you to the wild world of taxidermy. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Heather.
On this episode, we are going to read some stories sent to us by our listeners and react to them on how we would have handled the situation if it happened to us. So these are like customer stories, right?
Yeah, pretty much, maybe good, bad, weird. We all have some sort of story with a customer. I know I have a good story to throw in here about rare justice being served to a customer of mine that honestly barely ever happens because, I mean, if we're gonna get screwed, like, there's not much we can do if a customer doesn't want to show up and pay for something, for instance.
Yeah, is that story that I think you had told to me
I
before?
did. I told it to
Maybe.
you, and then we didn't put it in an episode, so I thought this would be a good fit for that.
Yeah, that I'm looking forward to hearing that one again. And but yeah, so people sent us in some customer stories basically, and we get all kinds of stories, all kinds of customers. Most of us have our own businesses, so there's a lot of opportunity for things to not always go so great all the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for people to either be mean or, like, you get those weird calls and don't know how to handle them because they're asking if you can mount their grandma or something,
Oh
like
yeah.
taxidermy or their grandma. So, I didn't read really any of these stories. I know I glanced at a couple that I have to read, but I'm anxious to see what people have to say.
Yeah, so with that, I guess we could just jump right into
Yep.
it and I can start this first story. So, this is verbatim, right? Like as the listener sent it into us, like word for word.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So here we go. Story number one. This listener says, we had a guy come in to pick up his deer over 10 years ago. He told the boss that we had shrunk his deer. Boss says, well, the hide is punched with your invoice number, etc. All the normal stuff about getting it as big as the skin allows. When the customer says, no, you shrunk my antlers, we explain that yes, they do shrink a tiny bit. That's why they have to dry before officially scoring, and so forth. Customer proceeds to explain that the government has been shrinking all my stuff for years. They do it slowly so you won't notice. Didn't know what to say. We have had so many, but that's one of my favorites. There was also a female veteran that had her leg blown off, and after having part of it amputated, she kept the bone and skin and wanted a knife handle made out of the bone and a sheath made out of the skin. Wild. John actually wrote a book, and these stories are in it. It's called Taxidermy Life by John Wilson.
Huh. Well,
So,
where do we start with this?
yeah. So the customer says, no, you shrunk my antlers. They do shrink a little
Yeah,
bit.
but
Okay.
not like visibly, shrinking
I wouldn't
really.
say so. Yeah. And then to say that the government has been shrinking all my stuff for years. They do it slowly so you won't notice it.
Oh, well, I mean, the government does a lot of stuff, but I don't know if they're if they're like
If they're targeting your antlers for
yeah,
some
I mean,
reason.
shrinking all your stuff. Like I wonder what else the guy thought that he had, like, was having shrunk.
I don't know. Yeah, the government thinking, "Oh, we're gonna show this guy. Let's
Yeah.
let's miniaturize all his
Do
belongings."
they have like a shrink ray that they pop into when he's like not home and like and shrink all his stuff?
Yeah, that's
I mean, maybe he was talking about, like, how stuff has become smaller. Like, they claim
oh,
that,
like,
like, you're paying more for like smaller amounts of food.
a pack of Oreos is now,
Yeah.
like, smaller, but you're paying more for it.
Yeah, but yeah, that's I don't know how I would have handled that either. I don't think I just would have been like, "Oh, well, I'm sorry, yeah, you feel that way, but I didn't shrink your antlers."
I know, yeah, so what could you actually say in that circumstance? I would have been like, "Hey, man, sounds crazy, but it sounds like you need to take it up with the government, not me."
Yeah. Uh,
We both agree it's not my fault at this point.
yeah,
So,
man. I know so on to the kind of the leg bone sheath thing. I didn't think you could do that.
yeah, because again, they said a veteran had her leg blown off and having part of it amputated, kept the bone and skin, wanted a knife handle. and a sheath made out of the skin. That is crazy. I didn't think you could do that either. Isn't there, like,
Um, hmm.
laws pertaining to that? Oh, I guess if it's your personal body.
Well, I mean, I know that I've seen where people die and they have their skin preserved like with a tattoo on it. So maybe
Oh,
there's not any kind of I don't know if I ever met some woman and she's like, "Yeah, this knife was made out of my leg bone and the that leather there is my skin." Yee.
I would I feel like, "Man, I don't wanna mess with
I
you." You're
know.
crazy.
I
Not
know.
crazy, but, like, just that's pretty cool, I
It
guess.
is cool. I mean,
If if you think about, like, if you had your leg blown off and you had the opportunity to salvage it in
yeah.
some
I
way.
wonder if we can get a picture of this thing.
Oh, I know, we should ask
I'm gonna write it down.
how I would respond to that. I'd be like, "Oh, man, I wish I could help you out." I don't think I would be the person to talk to. Like, if somebody came to me and they said, "Hey, my leg bone, my leg skin," I'd be like, "Man, I'm gonna refer you to somebody who might be a little more able to help you."
Yeah.
I don't think I would wanna take that on myself. What would you do?
Who
Like,
would
if somebody literally came to you and was like, "Hey."
who would you refer him to? Like, I mean, maybe I would be like, "Hey, you could take the bone to my skull cleaning guy, and he could clean it for you, and then you can maybe take the skin to that tannery down the road that I use, and then find a knife maker to make it."
Yeah,
Like,
see, I'm thinking, I guess, a knife maker. I I don't know.
that was 2 stories that kinda leave you a little speechless.
Yeah, you kinda just be like, "I don't know how to handle those things."
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, that was a good one for story number 1. Like I said, I didn't even read them when I was putting this, like, script thing together, so that worked out.
Yeah, so that's super interesting. It's not something you see every or hear about every day.
No, that was a good one. That was a good one. So thank you for sending that in. So up next, I will read our second story of the episode. It looks like this might be a 2 stories in 1 type of deal as well. Said that the first one is short and sweet. I have one customer that is very well off, and every time he picks up a mount, he hands me an extra couple $100 and tells me not to tell my wife or the government. Okay, fair enough. And
Right.
that was the first story. Number 2, I had a father and a son come in with 3 deer. They were new customers and wanted to know how much deer mounts were. I told them, and then the father asked what the deal was on 3. I was feeling a little sarcastic that day and asked him which one they wanted the crappy job on. They left all
Oh.
3 at full price and they have been back every year since. Oh shoot, there's a couple stories in this one.
Oh, yeah, number 3.
Okay, so number 3 in this paragraph. This one is the ugly one and the longest of the stories. So a customer picked up his deer and he appeared to be happy. About a week later, he came back very agitated. The deer had a real rough cape with tick damage in the brisket and the armpits that I blended in with some pretty convincing paint job. He pointed at that and said, "What the F is this?" I was trying to explain it, and then he started accusing me of switching capes and then pointed at the eyes and said that his other one didn't look like that. To that, I said, just because his previous taxidermist did it a different way, that didn't mean that I was wrong. At that point, his eyes started darting around the shop, looking at everything with a crazed look on his face. I was worried that he was going to start destroying things, so I asked him how much he paid for that mount. He told me, and I reached in my cash drawer and gave him his money back and told him to get out. He grabbed his deer and walked out, saying that he was going to tell everyone about me. To that, I said, "Make sure you tell them how you bullied me into a free mount." His wife, who was with him, said nothing up to that point and said, "We will, or anyway, I will." I feel that the only thing I did wrong in the whole situation was to give him his money back before I told him to leave. That's the end.
Oh, wow. So there's yeah, quite a few stories to unpack there. We can, I guess, go in chronological
Yeah,
order.
so we have the first one where it's the rich customer who gives them an extra couple $100 and says, "Don't tell your wife or the government."
I need more customers like
I
that.
know, tell me about it.
That's very nice. So it's
Yes.
always, like, nice to get a tip when
Yeah,
you're doing
yeah.
this business.
Absolutely.
And number 2 had a father or son, came in with 3 deer. They that's pretty cool. They're was it? They're return customers now.
Yeah, they of course, you got everybody I feel is gonna ask for a discount. Like, most people are gonna ask for a discount because 'cause they're like, "Hey, why not?" Maybe they'll say yes.
Yeah. I do know a lot of people who've said, like, or told stories about how people ask for discounts, like, "Hey, if I bring you 5 deer, can I did get a discount?"
Mhm.
And it's like, well, and some people might say, "Yeah." I personally might be like, maybe," but, it's the same amount of work.
It is.
So it's hard to give discounts for stuff like that. I do get that, like, it is bringing you more work, but, somebody I guess, like, in my position, I'm taking in a limited number. I'm not trying to get a bunch of work, so I'd probably be like, "No, sorry, that's not really something I can do for you."
Yeah.
But a person who might be trying to garner as much business as possible, they might be more, interested in a deal like that.
That is true. Like, if you're trying to grow your business, I see giving a discount just because you're trying to get more work in. Not a major discount though, because I mean, we of course know when we buy something from a supplier, like what you spend $1,000, you get 12% off. Is that right? Like at
Uh,
Mackenzie, for
yeah.
instance. I don't know how the other ones work, but there's a lot of shops that you're not buying $1,000 at a shot, because you're trying to do a small amount at a time, so you don't have that big money going out the door.
That is a good point, like, you can get discounts from suppliers, though, if you order a certain amount. But, yeah, it's like, nah, kinda I don't know.
Yeah, it's not like other businesses, I feel, where you can order things in bulk. So if you bring something in bulk, you can kind of make money. It's still a lot of time and a lot of money on our side.
Right. Yeah, we don't really get away with, like, having less work because there's more to do. Like, every single piece is still the same amount of work no matter what.
Yep. Yep. So that was kind of clever to be like, well, which one do you want me to spend less time on?
The crappy job on.
Yeah.
And,
Uh,
yeah, obviously he was kidding, but they obviously were like, "Oh, well, yeah, fine by us."
yeah. So yeah, then the last one in that group was that guy who, of course, everybody thinks, I shouldn't say everybody. Most people think that their deer is like the deer you see in a picture of like a painting, and it's like this perfect, beautiful cape. And then once it's home and on their wall and they're like staring at it, they pick out all the flaws, like a crappy brisket hair that was on it.
Oh, I know, that is sometimes the trouble, like, here in Oklahoma, for example, we have a lot of deer that have a lot of tick damage in the brisket. So, and it's the capes aren't, like, fluffy and beautiful like you get up north, so sometimes they just don't look like you're saying, like, you know, a typical looking beautiful deer mount. It's just we're at the mercy of what the cape looks like.
Yeah.
Kinda like, for example, if you shoot an animal, like, if you shot a coyote in the summertime and you expected it to be big and beautiful and fluffy, well, it's not gonna look like that at all. It's gonna be very short-haired, not very fluffy.
Yeah, I know.
So
You see, it's like, I feel like the biggest culprit with that are red fox, where they see a red fox and they're like, it's beautiful. And then it's not nice at all. Because they're cool colored, they're pretty animals, but not as a summer coated red fox mount type of deal.
yeah, because their coats are pretty regardless, they're just so pretty, but then obviously they're not as big and beautiful and fluffy as they'd get in the
Yeah,
winter.
yeah. So I don't know, as far as when in that story when he was talking about how he gave him his money back. Like, I understand what it's like to be in your shop by yourself and have somebody bullying you and pushing you and you feel uncomfortable and you just want to get rid of them. So like, I don't blame you for giving him his money back.
No, like, if you just wanna, like, "You know what? It's not worth my time. Here, just take your money back. Get out of here."
Yeah. Um, you I wouldn't say like right or wrong. Like, in a perfect world, like, he didn't deserve his money back because you did nothing wrong. But I know that you just wanted to get rid of him, so I don't blame you.
Yeah. I hate to think that, like, maybe that customer said all that in order to try to get a free mount,
You
but
never know. I mean, I know we had a customer that sounded a lot like that, just was trying to pick out any tiny little thing that wasn't wrong, but he was trying to be like, "Oh, my other mounts don't have this." And it's like, "Did you ever look for that?" "Well, I mean, not really, but, like, I don't remember seeing them with this." "Oh, it's falling apart." It wasn't falling apart, he just wanted a discount. Yeah.
I know, that's like can get a little frustrating because I don't know. It's hard. We're obviously in an art business. So if somebody, like if the customer has an expectation, it's supposed to look a certain way and then it doesn't, you know, whose fault is it? Is there a fault to be had, or is it just the act of nature kind of thing?
Yeah. Mm. It's tough to deal with that. So you didn't do anything wrong. I I think you just,
No.
it was just a bad customer. And hopefully he don't come
Yeah,
back.
I know. I don't know how I would have handled that. I probably would have, I don't know. I,
I've definitely cried in front of a customer a couple times.
I mean, I was gonna say I probably would have cried
That
and
would
been
have
like, "Get out of
probably
here!"
been what happened. And I told people, I'm
I'm
like,
calling the
"Look,
cops. I don't know.
I'm not trying to make you feel bad. Like, ignore me. I can't help it."
Oh, yeah, we put our like heart and soul into these
Yeah.
pieces and stuff. It's our artwork. It's hard not to get upset if people aren't happy.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Mhm.
darn people. This episode of Wildverse is sponsored by Pro One Performance Chemicals. Pro One specializes in tanning chemicals for the professional taxidermist. They provide a complete line of tanning products that provide you with everything you need to tan the next hide in your own shop. We trust the Pro One process and tanning solutions on all of our customers' mounts. Ashley especially has had great luck using the Pro Max on all of her competition pieces. She loves how easy it is and how well explained all of the directions are directly on the bottle. It's truly a very versatile tan. Not only does Pro One have the best tanning chemicals out there, they also have the best glue. Here in the shop where I work, we use Pro One glue on all of our customers' mounts. From using it in habitat scenes to gluing the leather onto the back of our pedestals and our wall pedestals, you can use it for practically anything. I mean, heck, I even thickened it and used it in the wings that were on my flying squirrel I competed with a few years ago, and they are holding up great. We love how thick the consistency is and how easy it is to maneuver under the skin once the hide is on the form. Ashley and I both use Pro One, and it is truly the industry standard when it comes to glue. Now, as of 2024, you can order your Pro One products online at pro1performancechemicals.com. That's pro, the number one, performancechemicals.com. All right. So what's story number 3, Ashley?
This listener says, "Hey guys, I thought I'd lend a taxidermy customer experience story for your podcast." So, the first one that comes to mind is a time I had a customer show up one day to pick up a deer mount while I was busy on that day's project. This client had brought me 2 deer, one early season buck in velvet and one from late in the season. His velvet buck was done and ready to go, and his late season deer's antlers were high up on the storage shelf with the rest of last year's deer antlers to be mounted. This customer chats to me while I was trying to wrap up my project to help him get his mount paid for and loaded up. He knows his next deer is a ways out from being finished, so he wanders over to the antler shelf and notices the antlers to his buck on the top shelf. He asks if those are his, to which I reply yes, and he then asks if he could take them home until I need them. Many clients do this from time to time just to cherish the memory of the hunt by having those antlers around until it's time to put them out together. I have no problem with this, so I say, yes, that's fine, I'll get them down for you. I'm mixing up Bondo at the time for a form alteration I was in the middle of. The next thing I know, I hear antlers rattling. He got up on his tiptoes and grabbed the antlers. Mind you, I interlocked the racks single file standing on their skull caps, utilizing the shelf space as efficiently as I can. You can take them apart if you go in order of the jobs down the line with no issue, but grab a rack in the middle of the lineup and you'll be met with resistance and, if you're not careful, a domino effect. Next thing I hear after the rattling is crashing of antlers as they are pulled from their positions by the client. He grabbed the antlers and haphazardly yanked them from over the edge, causing the domino effect. Thankfully, there wasn't mass destruction. One set of antlers fell at the end of the shelf and crashed onto the concrete floor. The skull cap split in two. Luckily, no tines broke. He looked at me dumbfounded, like he had never saw this coming. Swearing to himself, he quietly apologized like it hadn't been a huge deal. More of a whoopsie. I said, "You're lucky I mixed up more Bondo than I needed. Bring that broken set of antlers over here and hold them for me." He did, and I Bondoed the skull cap back together with an extra dollop of Bondo. The whole time, he just half-heartedly repeated, "Sorry, man." The cherry on top, of the whole story was after this, we go to look at his beautiful early season velvet antlered whitetail. He admires it, he says he loves it, and just keeps staring at it like he's looking for something. This deer's velvet was starting to strip in some spots, so naturally I finished those peeling and scabby areas with a bloody look. Nothing grotesque, just a slight stain like they had had in life. He finally says, I'm not a fan of the red and the antlers. Can you fix that real quick? Other than that, it's perfect. I take it off the wall, put it back up on the mounting stand, and mix up some lacquer paint in my airbrush. I dulled the blood red down with some burnt umber so it was more faded into the color of the velvet. This, he said, was perfect, and he happily loaded up his deer. While I wish that was the end of it, the next morning I get a text from him telling me not to use white banded eyes in his mounts anymore. He wants them solid black, as he puts it, because that's how his old taxidermist did it. I did not argue, but I did explain why I use the eyes that I use, how a little eye rotation in the direction the animal's looking gives it a little more life and expression, to which he simply replies, I don't want it. Just use black eyes for mine and any of my buddies from now on. The customer's always right. Oh, geez.
Okay.
So that was kind of a long-winded one, but yeah.
It was a lot that happened with that guy.
Yeah, kind of a lot going on in that story. Customers just customer's always right.
Yep,
That's
yep.
what the person said.
Firstly, wreaking like havoc in your shop, knocking all your antlers down or some antlers and breaking them, and that's not the end of the world. But then,
No, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I understand the velvet. Some people don't want that look. That's like a 50-50 shot if the person's gonna like it or not. So
yeah, that's not a huge, controversial type take on something. My takeaway, God, I was getting anxiety just thinking about a customer grabbing at stuff
mm.
without giving permission to. Oh my gosh, that would be a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
Like, do not touch anything. Get your hands off. This is preschool 101.
It is, yeah.
Hands off.
That is true.
So,
I know it's kind of surprising that he was like, "Oh, I'll just go up here." I mean, because it's daunting when you look at a bunch of racks because they are all tangled together. Why in the world he thought he could just grab one, and then turn out to be a little bit of a prick.
I know. And like, just try to be difficult for the sake of being difficult, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So,
Who
which
knows?
I don't know. I do get, people want mounts to look a certain way if they're expecting something. The customer is like, they want it to look a certain way, no problem, right?
Yeah.
Well, not sometimes there's a problem. It's like a fine line, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like if they want black eyes in there, that's okay. If they're saying they want like blue eyes in there, okay, now we're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I mean, sometimes people I feel don't even really know what they want. I know just like on TikTok, I've posted a video of painting a deer, and people are like, I like it better before it's painted. Look, like I'm not going to ever send you home with a deer that's not painted.
Oh, yeah, I've had some crazy comments like that too,
Yeah.
just similar to yours.
Yeah, I don't
Hmm.
know. People, I guess, think they think they know or think they like something, and there are little things like those eyes. Is that the end of the world to not have any white showing? Nah, like oh well.
Yeah, just okay. I'm just gonna use not white banded eyes now. They're just gonna be completely black.
Yeah. So
Sure.
I guess the question for that listener is if he ever lets anybody touch antlers again. Any
Oh
customers
yeah,
come in and touch
I'd
your
put a
antler rack.
sign up that says "Do not touch," like or "Do not grab." Or I probably did have something, but people don't like to listen to signs all the
No,
time either.
I agree. They don't.
Yeah. I guess if that customer texted me the next day and then was all like that, I'd be like, "Hey, look, I don't think I'm the taxidermist for you. I think it'd be nice if you found somebody else." I'd say something like, "Hey, I don't know if I could meet your expectations,
Yeah.
so it might be best if you found a different taxidermist." I'd honestly probably say that if he was going to be so disruptive like that.
Yeah, because who knows if you mount another one for him and then there's something else now he like doesn't like or wants different. So
Yeah, I don't know. I guess the eye thing, that's not a huge deal, but if it was something a little more like quote wrong, it's
yeah.
because the eye thing's not wrong. If he wanted something like anatomically wrong, I'd be like, no, like we're not gonna do it. But
Yeah. Like what would that even be? I don't want my nose textured and I want it black. Like, I don't know if I do that.
I don't know, or, like, I really want the deer, like, squinting really hard, which I
Oh,
guess
okay.
you could do, I don't know, but it would just look funny.
Yeah. Hmm. Oh, customers.
Most customers are great,
Do we
but
wanna move on to story number 4?
yeah,
Okay,
have at it.
this one's kind of short. There's like two little short stories here. So the first one is an older guy brought in a deer, and it was his first buck, and someone at camp knew what they were doing and caped it for him. We all know those stories. I think we know what's going to happen
Yes.
here.
Say less.
Basically, they cut it from between the shoulders halfway to the back of the neck and then stopped. They then proceeded to chop the neck with an axe to remove it from the body, putting 3 or 4 giant 6 to 10 inch cuts into the cape with an axe. On top of that, the deer was dragged behind a four-wheeler by a rope and had a rope burn and drag marks. I ended up mounting it, but with a replacement cape, obviously. So there's story number one. And the other one is a little short one, and it's kind of along the same lines. The guy asked how to skin his deer, and I said to cut it off halfway up the ribs and skin it down as far as you feel comfortable, and I'll do the rest. He cut the entire deer in half with a sawzall, didn't skin anything, and brought me the whole front half of the deer.
I think I've seen somebody post something like that on Facebook. I wonder
Yeah.
if it's the same guy, but
Yeah. I know
that's
I got
funny.
one before. I've gotten a whole front half of a deer like flopped on my table.
Y Yeah, that's better than the first instance, like, if you okay, if you had to choose between what customer you'd like to have, would you rather have that first instance of the story where he says they cut it with the axe and drug it, or would you rather have somebody bring you the whole deer?
Oh, I'd pick the whole deer any day.
Yes. That's yeah, that's actually not terrible. Like, at my, another place I used to work, I told somebody like, "Oh, yeah, bring in the deer and I'll show you how to cape it," and I was thinking cape it off the head. And they no, they bring in the whole deer. They brought the whole body in. I was like, "Oh, I can show you how to do it from here too.
Yeah.
It's fine."
But the thing is, you show them a lot of the times, and then they just still keep bringing you the whole deer because that's a lot easier when you skin it. You skin their deer for them.
I know, then yeah, I can't blame them there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Uh,
that first instance where they said they used an axe to chop the neck and, put giant slices into the cape and, oh man, drug it with a four-wheeler, that's a lot of things you shouldn't do.
yeah, I know. That's one of those, I mean, we all know how that goes. As soon as a customer says, I have a buddy that used to work for a taxidermist, or I have a buddy who used to be an outfitter or a guide, you're like, oh no.
Yeah, when they're like, "Oh, my friend knows how to do it." You kinda hold your breath like, "I hope he does, because
Very rarely do they know.
yeah, some people have a lot of confidence, which
Hmm.
and then some people, it actually does work out very well, so I shouldn't, be too pessimistic there.
No, but
Some people actually do know.
it's somewhat rare.
Yeah,
It's somewhat
it's
rare.
I feel like the chances are over 50% that something's gonna be incorrect on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know my favorites are when they bring in, they're like, I think I left enough for a shoulder mount. And it's like cut off like below the jaw.
Oh, yeah, that's that's another instance too.
Yeah.
It's like, it and man, I guess just if you've never done it before, like, I guess I have compassion for people that have never done it before. It's like, like, I get it. You only do it once. You only mess up once, then you'll
Yeah,
get it. Well, or you'll
you
mess up
hope.
a few times and you'll get it. But it's until you know what you're doing, it's maybe hard to guess sometimes, or unless you have somebody to teach you what to do, it's hard.
Yeah, it is, but we know we do have so many things all over Google, YouTube.
Right. The excuses are becoming less and less valid.
Yeah, because there's so much information out there.
Yeah,
Ugh,
like, you try to post a lot on YouTube, so do I, and, like, I'd like to do more videos like that that are, like, from the hunter's perspective, like, how just to, you know, skin out a deer for a mount,
yeah.
but stuff like that's hard to produce sometimes.
Oh, I know, I know. I think sometimes people any of the listeners who don't make your own videos and stuff, it's not it's not easy.
Yeah, it can be hard
Takes
sometimes.
a lot of
Like
time.
"How can you do a video on this?" Yeah, but I need that, scenario to come into play.
Yeah.
in order to show you. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't either. But I guess that kind of takes us from that one. Do you want to read your next story? We have 6 stories for today, and this is story number 5 that Ashley has.
Yeah, story number 5. This one looks a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
So the listener goes, well, last season I had a current customer's friend call me and ask to drop off a deer. I politely said, I'm sorry, I can't take any more on this season. Well, that guy called him and he called me, bitching me out, saying I don't know how to run a business and that I must not know who he is. I told him I can't work 7 days a week and I have to have a cutoff being a one person to do quality work. He wasn't happy and he said him and his friend would find another taxidermist since they are doctors. I will be losing my biggest customer. Keep in mind, I did one sheep for the man so far.
Mm,
Ah,
that's tough.
that's another case where it's like, man, something. It's not you, it's them.
Yeah.
So,
Like, there was nothing wrong there. The guy should have respected that you have a cutoff. Yeah,
yeah,
that sucks.
I know. Because what do you do? What would you have done, Heather, in that circumstance? How would you have responded?
Man, I don't know. So I feel like if the guy would have been a really good customer who's brought me a lot of stuff, me being a pushover probably would have been like, okay, I'll take it on. But
Yeah, probably same.
that's not like what you should do. So yeah, it's tough because you don't want to lose those good customers because when stuff gets bad and people don't have a lot of money, those are the customers who are still going on hunting trips and are still going to get taxidermy done and have the friends who have the money to get that stuff done. So all I can say is I'm sure there'll be somebody else that'll take his place. Oh well.
Right. And they're losing their biggest customer. They brought him one sheep. I think you'll be
That's
okay.
true.
And if they were to go to anybody saying like, "Oh, don't use this taxidermist because they turned my business down." Well, why? Why did they turn your business down? Oh, they said they don't have any more time to do this work or something. Like if you explain the situation, it's not like they told you to, piss off. They said,
Yeah.
"Hey, I can't do anymore. Like I'm maxed out." So, I think you're still in the right.
Yeah, it's not like the customer could really say anything bad about the situation. Like, oh, they said they couldn't take my
Right.
buddies, so I'm not taking my stuff there.
Yeah, so now I've got a personal problem with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that one's probably just a customer you didn't want anyways.
I know, like, I guess I'm thinking now, do you think the current customer, do you think he was, like, embarrassed that he told his friend, "Hey, use this person," and then the taxidermist was like, "Hey, I can't?"
Maybe.
Like, maybe there was a little, like, embarrassment there,
Maybe.
like, my referral didn't go through.
Oh, like, I see what you mean, like, he is so important that
Yeah, yeah,
he
he
should be
thought
able
he
to get
could.
anybody in.
Yeah, exactly, like, maybe he was embarrassed that he could not make this thing happen for his friend or
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
that's
that might have
possible.
come into play.
Hmm, that's a good idea. That might be what happened because we are not in that position to ever think like that, but there are definitely those people out there that think very highly of themselves because they make a lot of money or they have an important job and they just think people are going to treat them different. And I can't put myself in that type of position or in their shoes to know.
I know, that's hard to do because number 1, I don't have that kinda pull, so I can't be like, "Oh, yeah, I got the hookup," I'm not gonna name drop nobody,
Yeah.
but,
Huh.
that's I don't know. So that's probably my perspective on it is that, like, the customer was like, "How dare you?"
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
And
well, it even said in the story, like, you apparently don't know
oh,
who I
yeah,
am or whatever.
I must not know who he is.
Yeah.
You know?
Apparently you're not that important.
No, apparently we don't know who you are, and I still won't mount this for you. I especially will not be your mount now.
Yeah. And then you're gonna okay, then I almost guarantee you would have took his buddy's mount and then you would have run behind because now like you probably did it for a couple other people too, and now you have too many things, and then you're running late. And then this guy's gonna call you and complain, and then he's not gonna be happy anyways, and probably not gonna bring you their stuff because you ran late.
Right. So if they're going to be complaining before they even hand you something, like before any like work is given or any kind of deal is made, if they're already bitching about something, then they're probably not going to be
Yes.
happy along the way for
I
some reason.
remember I heard from somebody somewhere, and I don't remember who it was. It might have even been a TV show or something. They were like, if the person is crazy before you have their, let's say, their deer and their money, and they're crazy before you have those two things, they are not going to get any less crazy once you have their deer and their money. It's just going to get worse.
That's that's a good point. So, if they're already saying odd things, they're gonna say a lot more odd things.
Once you have their stuff. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we have one more story left. And I think before I read the last story, I just got to tell you, I like you said, Ashley, you already heard this one, but for the listeners, tell you the story about my justice that was served to a jerk customer.
Yeah. Yeah, tell me again.
Yeah, so I had this guy that he brought in a shoulder mount and a skull. And of course the skull was done normal skull time frame. I think it was like say like 6 to 8 months, something like that. Because I know the skull guy gets backlogged. And the deer, I'm pretty sure the deer was like, let's say maybe like, I want to say it was a little under a year and a half because that was a year that I was backed up, like completely backed up. It was way longer than I want it to be. I like to stay around that 1 year time frame. And even before that, I was getting stuff out in 6 months. I don't even know how I did it, but I did. So
Yeah, it's like an ebb and flow of
yeah,
things
yeah.
sometimes. Yeah.
I was backed up. So, okay. So I told the guy, that it was going to be a while, whatever. He's like, well, I want to wait. I'm not going to come get my skull till my deer's done. Okay. Got his deer done. He came to pick it up. Nice as pie. No problems. Got the deer, got the skull. Helped him load it into his car. He left. And then I was leaving on like a little short vacation right after that. And when I got home, there was a letter in the mail about this check that was canceled. It's not that it bounced, it was just canceled. So I was like, no, I never had that happen before. And I figured out whose it was. And I texted the guy and I said, hey, like, I saw that your check was canceled. Was there any problem like with the amount? Like, anything like let me know what happened. Okay, so I get this text and this guy said, since it took longer than you said it was going to take, you'll get your money, but it's going to be at a discounted rate and it's going to be like in the time frame I want to pay you.
So he put a stop payment on it and decided to pay you at his convenience because he thought for some reason you were taking your sweet time,
Yep.
which I'm sure you were trying to get it back as quickly as possible. It's not
Yeah.
like you were like, "Oh, I'm gonna mess with this guy."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like
Let me show him.
I was working on other people's deer that were ahead of you in line and working down the line. And then yeah, so he was gonna get it to me at his own sweet time and at whatever discounted rate he thought was fair.
And that ain't cool. That's
No.
not how you do it.
So then I was like, okay, well, I need to get paid. So if you're not going to pay me, I'm going to have to go another route to get payment. And he texted me back, go for it.
Bring it.
Okay.
Basically, I'll bring it then.
So if he would have bounced the check, then it would have been like a civil matter and it would have had to go to court and like who's going to do that? I think he owed me it's like 400 and maybe like $30 is what he canceled the check for. So that wouldn't have been worth going to court, for $1,500 is pretty much what you'd have in court costs. And I was talking to some people and they're like, since he canceled that, that's considered
Is it like theft?
theft of services. That's considered a
Okay.
theft of services. So that's actually like a state police, like that's crime. So I was like, yes. So I called the cops, told them what happened. A trooper came to my shop, just got the guy's info, and then the guy got a call from a state police officer, and then I had a check in 3 days, and it was a money order, and it was for I don't even know why it was for more money, but it was like an extra like $20 or $40 than he owed me in the first place.
And he's
So
like, "Leave me alone. Here's the
I
little boy."
guess screw you,
I don't know.
buddy.
I'm
uh,
glad you got justice out of that, and that's
yeah,
a good lesson, like, for anybody if they ever run into that problem, which hopefully never, because that's kind of a unique situation that, like,
yeah.
somebody would put a stop payment on your check. So, I guess going forward, did you continue to accept checks as final payment? You
No,
didn't. So you were,
no.
like, cash only,
Yeah, after
like, I
that, I
was
was like
wondering.
credit card or cash because
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with anything like this again. And I didn't. The only other thing that I had to deal with is I had a bare shoulder, like a wall pedestal that I did run like way too late on. And that was just one of those deals where I had all these other things to do, and for some reason, that one just kept getting pushed back. Well, the lady came in, and I offered her a I think it was like I took like $150 off of this thing because I felt bad that it
Mhm.
took a while. And she was like, "Okay, so first of all, I know this is two stories, but they walked in. It was a husband and wife, and the husband walked in, and I showed him. I was like, "Oh, like there's the bear." He immediately took it off the wall and took it out to the vehicle, like before anything else. Which I,
Oh, so they were already mad. It's like, jeez.
yeah, he wasn't gonna. He was getting it out of there before they even paid for it. And I told her, I'm like, I feel really bad. Like I took $150 off of what you owe me yet. And she's like, that's not enough.
Uh, that's not enough. Like,
Yeah. So I
how
think
much
I
do they
gave
want
her, I
off?
don't remember if I gave her then 200 or $250 off. She's like, I guess that's okay.
Ah,
People.
I know. Like, I do get it to a degree
You're
because,
like,
things
"Oh,
are late, but,
yeah,
like,
you get a
man,
discount. It's $150
right, and
discount.
you offered, like, they
Yeah.
didn't even come at you asking yet. You offered straight up,
Yeah.
which is more than I think a lot of people would do.
Yeah.
They so
Yeah. Freaking people. Oh, it gives me anxiety talking about it. I'm so glad
I
I'm, like,
know.
done with that.
Ugh, well, that's why, like, you can't put a guarantee, like, if people are like, "Oh, guaranteed this timeline," that's, like, almost impossible for this type of work because
Yeah,
there's so many things that could come up. There if you send capes to a tannery, they could get behind, it's out of your hands, or, like, supplies, like, there were so many supply chain shortages, especially around COVID time. It was hard to get eyes. Eyes are still a little bit hard to come by.
it's a
Forms are
little
still a
bit.
couple weeks out. Yeah, I mean, like, probably more than I do. Things are still, like, hard to come by
They
sometimes,
are.
and it's things are out of our hands. Like, if it was all in our hands, okay, that's maybe a different story, and maybe that's what people don't realize, but a lot of things are out of the taxidermist's hands, so it's hard to stay on, like, it's a strict timeline sometimes.
It is, especially when you were used to it one way and then COVID hit and it
Just
is, like, completely different. Like, I think we just were talking to, Mackenzie or somebody, the one of the suppliers, I don't remember who it was. We were talking to them the other day, and they said any life-size form that you wanna order that we don't have in stock and, like, don't have poured, it's gonna at least be a month for you
Oh,
to get.
damn.
So, we're used to being, like, able to order it and you get it in, like, a week at the latest.
Yeah.
Well, now it's different.
That's like a month by them, like, probably pouring it and stuff, and then it still has to get shipped to you, so it could be, like, 5 weeks out, and then
Yeah, so stuff's different now, and it's hard to get used to how different it is.
right, and, like, a way you could mitigate that is like, well, yeah, I guess you could order stuff like, order all your forms, and some people do that, like, immediately, right? But
Mhm.
if you don't have the place to store that kinda stuff, or, if you're the kind of person who likes to take measurements of the tan skin versus the fresh skin, there's all kinds of factors, that's not always an option either.
Yeah, it's complicated.
It is complicated. I feel like the complicated aspect of it is not something that gets translated well enough to the customers sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's my rant. But
Alright, so we're gonna get to the last story here. Um,
yeah.
this one I did kinda read a little bit previous, and it's a good one. It's a good one.
Okay.
Alright.
Let's hear it.
So, I was going to be mounting a poodle for a customer. He was driving about 5 hours to bring his pet to me. I told him the deposit was $650. When he showed up, he had a check for 500. I reluctantly took it, and he didn't leave my driveway for about 4 hours after signing the contract. Strange.
Yes.
Within a 1 week's time span, I had over 500 messages, voicemails, or emails from him. He was wanting to make changes to the pose, eyes, weight, etc., that we had previously agreed on. I eventually told him he just needed to come pick up his dog and I'd refund his deposit. He refused to give me a date or time that he would be coming. He showed up at my residence at 6 a.m. I gave him his dog and a check for the deposit. He freaked out and demanded I give him cash, even though he had written me a check, saying that he couldn't cash it because it wasn't the name on the account. I used the name that he gave me and that was also on his check. I finally get him to leave with the check. A few hours later, I get a frantic call from the bank saying that this strange man is in there freaking out. I head to the bank. After all is said and done, about 2 hours. At the bank, they cash the check for him. He sits in the parking lot of the bank for another 2 hours. I felt unsafe and waited inside. That night, he sent me a message stating that I owe him $160 in gas money for coming to get the dog. I refuse and tell him that I am contacting police. I filed a police report the next morning, and the bank provided me the info that he had given them. The name and address he used to sign my contract were not even close to his actual name on his ID. An absolute crazy person.
Yeah, understatement.
That would be like
What?
your nightmare, Ashley.
Oh my gosh, yeah, what?
I know you get like nervous about people with things, and that would just, that would
Oh,
be your worst
no.
nightmare.
Yeah, it would. My first the first part of my worst nightmare is him staying in my driveway for 4 hours. I'd be like, "What the hell? Get out."
Yeah,
That's
what was he
say
doing?
it just 4 hours after saying I don't know.
Mm,
And then 500 messages, voicemails, emails from him, like, that alone. Okay, and I hate to say this is your first clue, but anybody not anybody, but when people are wanting to mount their pets, sometimes that can be a little bit of an interesting situation.
it
So,
can be, yeah.
it can be, sometimes not though. Like, so that not that you should refuse people wanting to mount their pets, but I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know. I feel like once he was at her house, like there were probably, I don't know if there's any indication he was a psycho until he was there at the house and then brought the
true.
check for the wrong amount and then stayed in your driveway for 4 hours and then messaged you all those things and then gave you a fake name.
Oh my god, yeah, fake name. Why are you using an alias to get your dog taxidermied?
Maybe he thought the government was after him too, shrinking all that
Maybe
stuff.
they're shrinking his poodle.
Yeah.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh, yeah. This whole thing gives me anxiety.
yeah. I guess the only thing in that case is it's really great. I know most people work from home in their shops, but it is kind of nice if you're not having people come to your house.
Yeah, and yeah, I'll be straight up right now. Like, I don't have people come to my like I work like from my residence, and I don't have people come here. And like
Yeah.
I do it for a lot of reasons, but this is kind of one of them. You don't know who you're getting into, like, and then especially because a lot of people contact you like just randomly online asking about services. So
Yeah.
like, okay, I don't know who you are. You could be using a fake name online too, and then show up at my house where I live, and then now you know everything. Like, I don't know. So there's a lot of like craziness that could happen there.
Yeah, there is.
So you get people like that. Like most people, like 90% of people, probably more than that, are great, you know?
Yeah.
But then you get a weird one.
Oh, yeah. That 1%, the absolute creeps like this. Like, mm.
Yeah. And then demanding money for
I'm trying to
gas.
wonder,
And
like, how did, why did she have to get involved with the bank?
uh, yeah, why did they have to get upset at the bank people?
Yeah,
What?
like, I would
What
think
did it
that's
say?
his ordeal. Like, I wonder what she had to do at the bank to get him to cash it.
Yeah, because he says, I finally get him to leave with a check. A few hours later, I get a frantic call from the bank saying this strange man is there freaking out. And w maybe because his n name on the check didn't match his IDs at all,
But then it's
and
like,
so
I wonder, like, did she have to write a check to his actual name?
yeah, I mean, you'd have to, I guess.
I guess. I mean, why? That's just so weird. Why was the guy like not like, oh, hey, this isn't the right name? Like, why did he even use a fake name?
I know, what? Like, that's a weird thing too.
uh,
Um, I almost wonder, like, because he said the customer originally paid with a check, right? So I wonder, if did he write him a bad check at first?
I
And then
don't.
he's trying to get him to pay him cash, and then maybe in your circumstance, like, cancel the check, and then now you got him for 500 bucks or whatever.
I don't
Like,
know. I feel like the taxidermist in that case, like, I would have never gave the guy a check back if, like, out of my account if I didn't know that their check was good. Like I would have already cashed their check.
yeah, but, like, what if I guess what if the check they put it through the bank and then the bank finds out it's bad, like, a
Mm,
few days later, because that could
maybe,
happen.
maybe, yeah. Like you think the funds are there, and then they find out they're not, or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, I don't know.
Like, have you seen that scam that goes on online? Like, you're selling something, let's say, like on Craigslist, and then the person, like, let's say you're selling a car and it's $1,000, and then the person sends you a check in the mail for like $1,500, and you're like, why did you send more? And they're like, oh, well, just take like what you think is fair. I want to give you a little extra, and then send me the rest back. So you're like, okay, well, actually, I'm going to take 1,200. I'll send you $300 back. You send them $300 back. The check ended up being bad, and now you're out $300.
Mm.
Like, that's a
Man,
kind of a common scam.
what cruds.
Yeah. So I almost like that's what my mind goes to. Like, was he trying to swindle it? But obviously not, because then the customer said, I told him to come pick it up. But I don't know.
And then trying to get
Hmm.
$160 for gas. Like, what are you driving? Are you driving a school bus? Like, what? Like, jeez.
Oh,
Oh, gosh. And again, people.
that's funny. Are you driving a school bus?
Well, I guess they did say it was like 5 hours there and then back. That would probably be about that,
For coming to
maybe?
get the. No, not even. Unless you are in like a motor home. I don't know.
You know what I picture? Like, I picture this customer, if you've ever watched the movie Ted and the guy who kidnaps Ted, that's what I'm
Oh,
picturing.
I'll have to rewatch that movie. I've seen it. I can't remember what you're talking about though.
He's like all I always picture in the end when he's, like, dancing in front of the TV, like, sipping his whatever he's sipping, and he's dancing all weird. That's probably what that guy was like.
I don't know. That's an interesting one though, for sure.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
that's not something you'd forget.
No.
There's some crazy stuff, man. I don't know. I've personally, like, knock on wood, all my customers have been so good. I've never had
Good.
any like issues that I would consider crazy. I did have one customer, they dropped something off with me, and it was like like a skull thing. It wasn't like a real taxidermy project. And they called me every week, sometimes multiple times a week, and it stressed me out so much. I was like, to the point it gave me anxiety, and I didn't even realize why.
Mm,
Um, that's
I
probably my
feel you.
only thing. Yeah.
I feel you.
So I kind of
Anxiety sucks.
resonated. Yeah, I kind of resonated when he said, uh, the 500 messages, voicemails, emails. So,
Mm,
anyway,
yeah, crazy. Okay, so that wraps up all of like the stories part, but we did have the one listener that sent us a story also kind of put a question in there with it, and we separated that because we thought that that would be something fun to talk about, and also not so fun talking about anxiety, since
yeah,
most bad customer experiences stem from running behind in our shops. This question fits in really well. So, Ashley, do you want to read that?
yeah, for sure. So here it is. Hi, I'm Katie from South Texas, wondering your input on what you do if you're taking in too much work and how your cutoff works, if you even have a limit. For the taxidermists who work solo and need to put a cap on how much you take in. I started out slow, doing it out of my shop behind my house and not pushing advertising, mainly staying busy, raising kids. Well, now they're older. I have bought a building in my town on a busy highway, so my business has boomed. So that's great. Location, 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 she
Yeah.
says. So, what's your limit on animals you take in if you work alone? Also, how much do you mount a week? I have to have time to go get supplies, pick up from the tannery, and drive to Mackenzie because we all know shipping sucks. So, it's not just staying here mounting every day, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So, yeah, basically the question is like, you know, what would we do, or gosh, how do you handle that?
So, yeah, how you put a cap on what you take in, what would be like your limit working alone? How many do you mount a week? I'm
Yep.
going to write those down. All right, we've got cap, how many, and like what do you mount a day? So, what do you think, Ashley, being a one woman shop, what is like your cap that you put on what you take in? Now, you of course just do like game heads. Well, you do some small, like you've done some life size too.
Yeah. So I take in like mostly game heads. I don't take on birds or fish. Like, it's all mammal stuff that I do. I get enough business from just like regular taxidermy, so I don't advertise for like skulls, or I don't advertise very much for like dry tanning stuff. I mostly try to make it stick to just regular mounts, and then I guess how to determine how much I can do, I might take on a little bit less than other people because, I don't have like a whole family to support. It's one thing. And like I have a little bit of other streams of income kind of, so like it's not like I'm completely solely relying on taxidermy, thankfully, but it's mostly taxidermy. So mm, it's such a hard question, right? um, how, like, for example, for just deer, and this wasn't like deer, like, or this wasn't, mammals or anything else. I said I wanted to take on a limit of like 40 this year, 40 deer. And then, I hit that, and then I started turning people away. And then I took in a bunch of miscellaneous stuff like some bears, bobcats, elk, random stuff just to keep it more interesting. So everyone's answer is going to be different. I would say try to determine how much you want to make per the year, how much you can actually get done in a year, in a week. I would say averaging like 2 deer a week, that's really good for a solo person. What would you say, Heather? Like that would put you at like 100 deer a year, which is a really good number for just, a solo taxidermist.
That is true. Like 2 deer a week didn't sound like much, but if you did 100 a year, I mean, I doubt that she's taking on solely just deer.
Right.
So I know when I first started out by myself, when I was doing really good that I could keep my time frame really low, I think it was like 60 deer. I'd have maybe 10 bear, let's say another maybe 10 to 15 odds and ends things, like you said, like elk or an aoudad or I don't know, just odds and ends things. And then maybe 10 or 15 small mammals. But then I was taking in skulls and stuff, but that all gets subbed out. But that
Yeah.
was doable. Like I could keep a good time frame on things with that. But it's tough when you're running everywhere. I think what has to happen, and it's really hard, is you need to put a really good schedule on the days that you do your running. And it's hard because it would be like, ah, crap, I need this. I think you need to be like, all right, on a Wednesday, that's my running day. And that's my maybe catching up on any kind of paperwork I need to do. And don't even try to mount anything in that day. Be like, because then when you try to mount this and then you're like, oh, I got to go do some of this. And then I got to go do some of this. And the next thing you know, you're running behind on all of it.
That's a really good piece of advice, actually, and something I'll probably implement too. Because if you set a day, like per week, that this is the errands day, and I'm not going to deviate from that like as much as possible, then if you don't have anything going on, yeah, maybe you could mount something that day. But if you have something going on, that's what you got to do, and that's like how you can keep track of like the business side of it,
Yeah,
right?
because that part's really tough. And then I know when I was swamped in work, something that worked really well for me, as long as I didn't get too ahead in my mind thinking of all the other things I have to do. If I would mount one a day, 1 deer a day, and finish work 1 deer a day, that was not stressful, that was easy, and you had a good flow of in and out. I think another thing too that people need to come to is just maybe not answering phone calls all day. Let people leave a message and you get back to them at your lunch hour or in the evening, because that whole stopping what you're doing and going and talking, and then the people talk too long and then you get out of the flow of whatever you were doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I that's another good piece of advice. Like if for example, like Heather, where you guys work, people could come in. Like you don't have appointments necessarily, or do you? Like people could stop in because, just
Yeah.
at any point. And that can be hard if that's how you have your taxidermy business set up, is like where customers could stop in. And I've been at a shop where, if people stop in, this guy, he just kept working. Like he just, hey, like I'm working and you're here. If you want to talk to me, you're going to have to keep talking to me. You have to follow me around and I'm just going to keep working.
Yep.
And that customer might have thought it was rude, but also it's work time. So you
Yeah.
can't consider that as being rude. You just got
Yeah.
to keep working. I know that can be hard if you're like, hey, I need to turn on the compressor and the guy's in the middle of talking, but
I know I've been there because I'm like, look, like I exactly the same thing. I'm working. Like you're gonna have to just talk to me while I work. I'm not gonna sit here and chat with you. Like, I got stuff to do. So yeah, that's kind of like the cap. How many? I agree with you on the cap where you just gotta figure out what you need to make a year.
Yeah, and another thing, like people have a lot of different turnaround times that they quote. I think a year on taxidermy is a good, like, solid average, whatever. Like, ideally,
Yeah,
we'd get everything out a lot sooner, but what you can get done in a year is a good, like, average standard, I guess. Standard is a better way to put it, right?
yeah, yeah. I think anywhere between a year and a year and a half is about normal.
Yeah. And then there's obviously people that advertise like 6 months out, and then that's great, but
Yeah,
that's hard to stay
it
on top
is.
of. Well, especially like when you get all your deer in the months of hunting season. If you get done in 6 months, well, what are you gonna do the rest of the months of the year? Like, you still need to have income. If you made enough in that time to support yourself for the few months that you have off, quote, then that's great,
Yeah,
but it's not always
feasible.
realistic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too that you need to, if you're running behind, there's some things that you need to stop taking in. Like, look, if you gotta stop taking in antler mounts or deer feet or squirrels or rabbits, like
Yeah.
you're just gonna have to stop taking them in because they take up so much time and they're just not sometimes really worth your time.
Yeah, I have an opinion about that too. I guess, like, if you're at the point where you have to turn stuff away, you're at the point like, I can't do this anymore. I need to, like, take on less. You're at the point where you either need to turn down people or you need to, like, hire somebody. So those are your
Yeah,
two options basically.
and that's hard finding
Mhm.
somebody to work for you, and it's not gonna just leave as soon as they know enough.
Right. Yeah, that's another factor. Was there any other part of that that we didn't answer?
Yeah, how your cutoff works, or if you even have a limit. I guess you could kind of cut on that really, like, touch on that really quick on how your cutoff works. Like, what do you do?
Mm.
Like, do you post it to social media? Do you each year they know how much you're taking in? Set your number low because you know you're probably going to take in another 10 or 15.
Yeah, that's a good point too, like
Yeah.
how to set the cap. So yeah, when you're at the point where you set a cap, I think you can either post to social media or you don't. It'll make your life easier, hopefully. Or just when people call, obviously you say, "Hey, we're full. Sorry, can't take any more." And you know, there's a lot of worry. I've heard people say like, "Well, if I turn them down for this job, maybe I'll lose that customer forever, and then they'll take work to some other taxidermist, and I'll lose out on this customer." Well, you're not going to be able to take all the customers in
No.
all the time. This business has a lot of business. Like taxidermy, there's a lot of taxidermy business out there. I don't think anyone is hurting for work very much. I mean, maybe a little, but like for the most part, taxidermists are behind.
Yeah.
There's way more work than there are taxidermists. So like if you're in that season where you might not be getting as much work as you'd like to be, you'll eventually get, like, it won't take long before you're there. So be okay with turning down work because it's important.
Yeah, I know for instance, we cut off our bears last year and had some people call and we're like, "Hey, look, like we're not taking any more bears. Like you're going to have to hold on to it till spring where it's a new year, we'll start taking some." And we just had a guy the other day brought the bear in. He waited, he didn't want to take it anywhere else. So, you'll have some of those. You'll have people you won't get, but like you said, Ashley, you can't take everybody.
Yeah, that's another good piece of advice though. Like if you have people that are like, I really want to take it to you, and like, is there anything you can do? Well, there's something I can tell you to do is just keep it in your freezer, and then later on in the year, give it 6 months or whatever, give me a call, and I'll probably have room then. So
Yep.
that's another option if people are pretty adamant on using you.
Yes. Yeah. Because you'll have some will definitely do it. But yeah,
Yeah,
you got to just set that number. And like I was saying, set your number maybe 10 or 15 low
yeah.
because you're probably that way, like set it at a safe number, but that you could still maybe take a couple more because you might get those people that are like, I've been taking stuff to you for however many years and I don't have a freezer to put it in and blah, blah, blah. So you're going to end up bending and taking a couple people's stuff.
Right, like what I did, I set my number kinda low, and I said, like, "Okay, well, if I have existing customers, they wanna bring me something, I can take that in." And I didn't expect a lot of that, and I did get some, so it wasn't like it didn't max me out completely. I was still fine.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up our customer stories episode. We would like to thank you for listening to our podcast, Wildverse. Let us know if you have any other customer stories you would like to share, and we can maybe do another one of these episodes in the future because we all know that we have our fair share of customer stories. If you want to comment on this post and share your stories as well, that would be great. You can comment on our Facebook, Instagram, or our YouTube.
And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Wildverse Podcast, to watch this episode and see when new videos come out. We would also love it so much if you left us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Bye.